Welcome to another segment of ACRP TV. Our spotlight today, project management for non-project managers, leveraging the skills you already have to drive projects. My name is Michael Causey, Editor-in-Chief here at ACRP. This is obviously such an important topic. Clinical research coordinators and workforce professionals are so often thrown into positions of leadership or project management with arguably not enough training. We're lucky today to have with us Dalfoni Banerjee, who is the Principal Consultant and CEO at 360 Pharma Solutions. We've had the chance to speak a few times in the past. You've been very helpful on blogs and other materials. I thank you for that, and I thank you in advance for being with us today. Let's jump right in and talk about the plight of the clinical workforce. What's it like for someone to be thrown into a leadership position? I think your words of optimism are saying you've got more tools at hand than you might realize. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me today. I'm happy to chat with you about this important topic that I feel very passionately about. So in clinical research, clinical project managers, that they're the ones who run the studies. It's a very, in some ways it could be looked at as like a glamorous position, right? So many people aspire to be clinical managers. So from disparate backgrounds, maybe regulatory, maybe the labs even. I came from the lab, straight from the lab into clinical research when I went in. And so you're prepared with the scientific knowledge. Oftentimes you're prepared with regulatory knowledge, some expertise around maybe how the company works. But, and so these, the CPMs come with a broad set of really, really valuable skills, but they're not oftentimes trained project managers. And so what they find themselves doing is applying the wealth of knowledge that they have, but falling a little bit short, or in my case, when I first became a project manager, sometimes very, very short on from the project management angle. So you set it up exactly right, Michael. It's exactly right. The project managers come in, are required to drive the projects, but really don't have the soft skills that they need to do, or the hard skills that they need to do.
Yeah, let's talk more about those soft skills, because it's great that people like you are speaking out now. Our industry has not always focused on this side of things enough. There was the assumption of, I know how to run the nuts and bolts of a clinical trial, but I don't know how to lead people or to communicate. As you stressed before, communication is key. Talk about some of those important soft skills maybe that get overlooked and why they're so important to focus on.
Yes. So as you say, that I said, communication is key. I really believe that. Yes. Yes. And so I have several tips. Let me just take a half a step back. A few years ago, I wrote a paper called 7 Breakthrough Behaviors for Clinical Project Managers. And in that, there's 7 breakthrough behaviors, one of which is communicate with savvy, right? And that's one of the pillars of the paper. And the talk that I give on that paper really focuses and drills down into 12 focus areas of communication. So let's go through a few. For instance, easy peasy, build relationships, right? So relationships are so key. The great late poet Maya Angelou once said, people will oftentimes forget what you did, forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you make them feel or made them feel. And so that to me can be the pillar of building relationships. We could go through others. For instance, pay attention to nonverbal signals, right? Body language. Body language can sometimes convey what words can cover up, right? So words can conceal certain attitudes, certain knowledge even, but body language tells it all. Conduct effective meetings, and I spend a lot of time, and because it's so important, on conducting effective meetings. How do you do that?
Well, let me jump in and quote you again, because I want to make sure we talk about, one of the things I loved you said earlier when we talked was, if you don't have an agenda, you shouldn't have a meeting.
That was what I was going to say. That's right. That is the first thing, Michael.
Okay.
That's right. if you don't have an agenda, then there should be no meeting. And the other thing is that meetings, if they're not planned and executed properly, can be a real drag on teams. So with everything else that's going on, you want to keep your project team on track. And so how do you do that? I have 7 easy ways. I won't go through them here. We don't have time. But number one is, of course, have an agenda. Another one is basically invite only those folks who need to attend. Put the agenda out ahead of time so that folks know what is expected of them and what they should be prepared for. Capture action items, risks, and issues, and track them. So that's just a few examples of conducting effective meetings.
Right. Okay. That's very helpful. Let's drill down another one I found really important. It's always been important, but in the days of COVID now, when everyone's remote, emailing is so much more important. And you talk about emailing like a pro. Describe that concept. What is that?
Thank you, Michael. Yes, emailing like a pro is actually one of the fun topics because it's so easy to do. And most people most professionals, including clinical project managers, do maybe 1, 2, or 3 of them, but we need all 4 in order to get your emails opened, read, and responded to, right? So number 1, a catchy title. Maybe an action-driven title, action requested by October 15th. The next thing is the purpose of the first line, dear team, dear colleagues, the purpose of this email is X, Y, and Z. So that way, everybody's thinking, well, what's in it for me? With them, WIF, with them, what's in it for me? So what's in it for you is I'm going to make your life easier. That's the first line. We're going to cover these topics that'll make your life easier. And the topics are 1, 2, 3, 4, perhaps hyperlink to the various topics underneath. But in that first few lines, you have your catchy title, you have your what's in it for the reader, and then you have the topics that are going to help make their lives easier and hyperlink to those topics. Very easy to do. And it really will get your emails read and responded to.
Fantastic. You talk about that. I think about from coming out of the journalism side, it's like having a good headline for an article.
Exactly.
Grabbing attention, you're telling people what you're about to tell them or what information you're about to share. We've been speaking here with Dalfoni Banerjee. She's the principal consultant and CEO at 360 Pharma Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us these really helpful, actionable tips for clinical managers and others to use to lead projects.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you for having me.